Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my interviews. Now, we all remember 2020, don't we, when a certain something was flying about and we were all told to go and sit in our houses and wait for it to be over. I think it was 3 weeks to flatten the curve, if I remember rightly. And as a result of that, at the speed of science, we also had something that was delivered to pretty much everybody in the world, apart from those who had a little bit of common sense and thought, actually, what is in this? Do I really need it? And a lot of people were given it, and we saw a lot of harms happen as a result of that. Now, over the last 3 years or so, a lot of information has come out about this particular nasty thing that was put into people's arms, mandated in many cases, or at least cajoled by many people. And if you couldn't go abroad, or you couldn't get your job, or whatever it was, or couldn't even see loved ones getting married or in care homes. It was a very terrible thing. But those people who took it many of them have found actually it's not been beneficial to them in the end. They were getting the thing that they were told it was to prevent. And not only that, some of them have had terrible injuries, and some, quite a lot, have died as a result of taking this thing. Now, today we're going to be talking to an insider, somebody who was a parliamentary researcher, a senior parliamentary researcher, worked for an MP in the civil service in Parliament, and became a bit of a whistleblower on some awful things that happened to her. And so she knows the inner workings of government. The case has been on the mainstream media, her particular personal case, but it's a wider issue now because I and a number of people would like to know why this thing that was put into people, this terrible thing, is not being spoken of by the existing parties in Parliament, but those that are rising up and very close and could be in Parliament soon. People like the Reform Party, for example, not talking about it. Well, let's not have me talk about all of this because you're bored with that. Let's bring on. Now, I should say, to protect her identity, Ms. A is joining me with anonymity. So, Ms. A, welcome to the show.
Hello there, Richard. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for coming on and being brave enough. And of course, you've gone through some terrible stuff which has been in the press, working in Parliament for an MP, some awful experiences. So, and you're very concerned that nobody is talking about the particular jab that I referred to at the beginning of this. So, first of all, let's just find out a little bit about you, if we may, and who you are, where you worked, and then we'll get on to the business of why people aren't talking about this and what might happen should another pandemic, let's say, hit our streets.
Yes, I worked for a Labour MP in Westminster itself for several years, and unfortunately I had to bring an employment case against my former employer, which obviously ended my career. I believe I am the first and the only member of staff of an MP to take their employer to court and to win. And that took about 3 years. During that process, I did go to quite a senior Labour MP, now a minister, Jess Phillips, for help with regards to the sexual assaults that were inflicted upon myself. And although she was empathetic or seemed empathetic at the time, she did absolutely nothing to help me. I just wanted to get that out there, given other issues that have come up in the past few weeks with regards to this lady. That aside, I am not speaking today because of my case. My case is well documented, and I've moved forward with my life. But during my time in Westminster, I met a former MP, Andrew Bridgen, who I found to be a very decent human being, which is very rare in the houses of horrors, as I call it. And we became friends quite quickly. And out of 650 MPs, he was the only MP that was prepared to put his head above the parapet and help me with regards to what I was going through. And at the time, he was warned off by Boris Johnson's then right-hand man not to get involved. But Andrew isn't that kind of person. He did get involved, and he helped me with my court case and with the internal investigation. Moving forward, obviously 2020 came around and 2021, and there were clearly some issues with regards to excess deaths and injuries from the sea jabs. I believe strongly from the sea jabs, and many other professionals across the globe agree with that. And Andrew was, as we know, the only MP to speak on this matter. Bearing in mind, Andrew has become a very, very close friend, and I've helped him with quite a bit of research with regards to all of this. And he was shunned, he was heckled, they tried to bribe him to keep him quiet. They did many things, and they've literally destroyed his career. And since Andrews left Parliament, or he was voted out of Parliament, let's say, which I find hard to believe, he's continued his battle to oust these people with regards to the excess deaths. He's never, ever waned from that. And I just find it bizarre that nobody's speaking about this since Andrew was ousted and kicked out of there. I do know for a fact, just over 2 years ago, Andrew, whilst he was still a sitting MP, did approach Nigel Farage and spoke to him about the excess deaths and asked him, gave him the information, gave him all the research, everything he could possibly need, and asked him if he would join him in bringing this out, to the general public, because Nigel clearly has quite a big following. And Nigel Farage basically told Andrew he wouldn't be speaking about it, and he told him to shut up about it and to stop speaking about it.
Wow.
Moving forward now, we're in the position now where a lot of people believe that reform are the answer to all of our problems. And yes, okay, they speak up on many important issues, but not on this issue. There are many, many injured, tens of thousands of people injured by the sea jabs, and many people have lost their lives. And not only that, we have the issue of the midazolam and morphine issues, and a lot of people who lost their lives in the care homes. And Andrew is now facing, a court battle against Matt Hancock, which Mr. Hancock keeps delaying this trial. He's not even given defences yet, and that keeps getting delayed. And I do worry, Richard, that given what we've seen with regards to the judiciary over the past few years, as to whether or not that case will be heard by a judge with a good moral compass, So there are many things, but in particular, with what's going on with reform and the rise of reform, and people are putting a lot of faith in reform into Nigel and Richard Tice.
So
And I do know that there are other rising stars, let's say, people who are following the likes of Ben Habib, who I have a lot of respect for. He's very knowledgeable, very articulate, very patriotic. But I do know that recently um, Ben has also stated he's not going to speak on the vaccine harms and the
So
death.
this, this is quite outrageous, really. That something that happened. I mean, we saw it's not as if it was just a parochial thing in one town. This was across the whole world, and of which this country was also part of. Administering and ensuring that people took something to the detriment often of their career. As you said, they couldn't visit their care homes. People were prevented from doing all sorts of things unless they had this particular medical intervention. And as a result of that, people have been harmed. And it wasn't as if it was just one age group, which we were told initially it was going to be the over 80s. This went right down to the point that it was nearly into children and babies. And I know that Andrew Bridgen spoke very fiercely about stopping this going into children completely unnecessarily. And yet, now that we know, and all of this data is coming out, which proves that it wasn't a good idea, let's just say that, that nobody is talking about it, particularly, well, I mean, people are talking about it, you and I are talking about it, and many of my audience are talking about it, but the people that are supposed to be, let's say, governing this country are not talking about it as if, well, that's old news and it doesn't matter. Why do you think that is?
Why do you think they let me
Why
put
do you
it this
think
way.
that people like, yeah,
Why do you think a snap election was called when it was called?
to avoid information coming out that would be
Yeah,
detrimental to the Labour Party, possibly?
yes, not just to the Labour Party,
To divert
to
our
the then
attention?
government also with
Yes.
regards to the vaccines. There was a lot of momentum happening because of Andrew speaking up and evidence that he was bringing forward. And also, there was another case of the human trafficking. I know this is totally different, it's off topic, but Andrew was getting prepared to use his parliamentary privilege to bring out information with regards to human trafficking, particularly children from Ukraine to the UK.
Can,
Um,
can I ask you, when you were working as a senior parliamentary researcher, what period are we talking about before you, because you did the right thing and said, hang on, this has happened to me, and as a whistleblower you were kicked out? What period are we talking about?
I started work in Westminster in 2017.
Right. Okay. So that's quite close then, before the pandemic.
Oh yeah.
When you were working there, could you just give our audience an idea? Were they aware that something was going to happen? Was there preparations? A lot of people have said, "Oh, we knew it was coming. It was pre-planned." But was there any notion with the civil service or with the MPs that something was coming fast and that we would be treated the way we were treated?
Um, I was fully aware of it, but if I'd have spoken up about it, it probably would have been I would have been called a conspiracy theorist anyway.
Yes,
There
but
are
I mean,
many,
were they sort of had the civil service a notion that this was going to happen before anybody officially said anything?
um, no doubt some at the higher level were fully aware of it.
Yes.
Um, but your regular backbencher MP, probably not.
Right.
Probably
Okay.
not. Um, they don't even want to acknowledge it now, for example,
No.
what we've gone through. So I don't think they would have.
Oh, hello. Have I lost you? Are you there?
I am sorry. Sorry about that, Richard. There was a call coming in.
Oh, I thought some malicious,
No,
overseeing something had come in and just
put it this
curtailed the
way.
conversation.
I'm sorry about that.
No, no, don't worry.
Put it this way. Andrew was not. Andrew was taken in by the scam.
Yeah.
originally. He actually believed his government before he took those vaccines, which actually harmed him.
Yes.
Um, it took him a while to actually um, digest the enormity of what had happened and continued to happen after that. But once he was awakened, let's say, um, he didn't hold back. He went into the research, he spoke to the right people, he got the right data, he got the right information, and he risked everything
Yes.
to get that out to the people.
I mean, and viewers will remember, of course, he stood up there in the House of Commons completely alone as the
Yes,
only MP
yes,
when
he
he
was
was.
shunned. He was shunned. He was belittled. He was ridiculed. They tried to destroy everything. His
Yes. What I
everything.
found, what I found remarkable, I still find this remarkable to this day, is that the very first time that he got up on, I think it was the 8th of December or around that time,
Yeah,
2023, whenever it was, um, and
2022, I believe it was.
2022, I beg your
Maybe.
pardon,
Yeah.
and yes, that's right. And he got up and he spoke to the houses. The other side, the Labour Party, were not there to ridicule. I could understand that perhaps his colleagues in the Conservative Party said, "Well, this is not for us," but for the other party to sort of, they could have ridiculed him by being there and shouting him down, but nobody turned up. Now that told me they all knew something.
Of course they did.
Yes.
At that point, they did.
And so therefore, and they didn't want anybody to know anything about it, but it sort of, it screams that something was going on. But of course, now that Andrew is no longer there, it has made it very difficult for him to get the voice of the general public into the Parliament and at least broadcast it in the House of Commons and in Hansard so that it's recorded and things like
Yeah,
that. But of course, he is still out and about doing the best he can.
he is. He does a lot of speaking venues for free, basically, most of the time,
Yes.
to his own expense. Um, and he's still trying. But there are a lot of people I've noticed who ask the question, why doesn't Andrew join Reform?
And why do you suppose that is?
Well, why would Nigel Farage ask Andrew to join Reform, given he doesn't want to speak up about the vaccines?
Yes, so fairly
That is the
self-evident, really.
reason. That
Yes.
is the reason that they don't want Andrew, because he's a truther. He speaks the truth no matter what it costs him.
So let's just say, for example, then that Reform were likely to get in at the next election. We've got a hell of a long way and a lot of stuff to get through before that happens, hopefully. But let's assume that Farage or somebody from Reform gets in. Do you think there would be any chance that they would to talk about it if they were in? I mean, he's not talking about it in Parliament now, and he gets up every now and again.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but Farage does. I mean, he did do quite a long interview a couple of months ago with regards to mass deportations, and he's totally against it now. Yet he, before he was elected, was all for mass deportations. So he does flip flop, and I have noticed that Farage lately has taken a leaf out of Donald Trump's manifesto, let's say. And Donald Trump obviously has hit the ground running. And since Nigel went over to the US to Donald Trump's inauguration, he has slightly jumped on board again with deportations. So I think he's influenced quite a bit by Donald Trump. I think he
I,
wants. I
yeah,
think,
and I guess by popular, popularist
yeah.
politics.
And
Um,
so with regards to, we have now RFK Jr., who Andrew is friends with. Hopefully, God willing, he will be confirmed. And I think if there is something comes out in the States with regards to these jabs, and something is done about it over there, then I think Nigel, the coward that he is, he will never speak up the truth beforehand. He's not a courageous man. He will follow follow the trend, let's say. Once it's out there, then he may jump on board with regards to the jabs. But the
Yes.
point being, 2 years ago, if he'd have spoken up and supported Andrew, we probably could have saved a lot of people.
And this is obviously the worry, because people are ignorant still of the
There
dangers.
are many people who are still don't want to believe that their
Yes.
own government would harm them in that way.
Yes. No, absolutely. And it is still going on. People are still lining up for their jabs,
Mm.
for
And it's
their boosters.
concerning. It's really concerning, isn't it?
Very concerned. So, I mean, we talk about it on the channel, perhaps not as often as we can. We certainly used to. If I used to put a syringe on the thumbnail, I could guarantee that I would get 50 to 100,000 viewers on it.
Mhm.
But I don't make the videos just to be popular, because I cover all sorts of different subjects.
Yeah,
But and it isn't really about being popular, it's about getting a message that is important. And
it's
of course
very
it.
important, Richard. I think it's one of the most important things that we need to be focused on. Because I do believe that there's something coming down the line very, very quickly, very,
Yes.
very soon.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second. I just wanted to sort of add the point that a lot of people, as you mentioned it there, the cognitive dissonance that people have, they almost shamefaced to talk about it, because they must now, the public on the whole, must be aware that there was potentially some harmful benefits from taking it. Not all of them, because those that could go back and get the flu jab or the boosters may be completely ignorant, but there must be a growing number of people who understand that there is a problem with it, but for some reason uh, they they cannot bring themselves to talk about it, and I suppose they're worried that people like you and I and others who perhaps were telling them don't take it at the time might make life difficult for them, which that's not the point. It's that's not about it. It's about protecting people from malicious intent, which does seem to be what the government was doing. How do we, I mean, I'm putting you on the spot here, but how do we try to help those people save face so that they can start to talk about it? Because in many ways, we want people who have had it to be able to talk about it, to put other people off, because it's no good me saying anything about it, because I never had it. I don't know. I can sit on the sidelines and say, oh, well, I told you not to take it, but that's not going to help anybody.
Um, well, you're right in saying that there will be a lot of people that feel embarrassed or feel um, duped, let's say, and don't want to talk about it. Um, and you're correct in saying those who have awakened to what was done to them, if they have taken the jabs, such as Andrew, such as Andrew, people like that need to start speaking about it. They do, especially given that a lot of children had, listened to their family members and their parents who advised them on taking it. Um, that must have caused a lot of guilt um, in some parents. Um, I don't know. I haven't got the answer to that, Richard.
No.
Other than it's going to take the likes of people like Ben Habib, people like Nigel Farage, people like Richard Tice, and all of these so-called reformers to grow a backbone and speak the truth. This is about crimes that mustn't be allowed to go unpunished, and justice must be served, must be served. And the
Yes.
only way to do that is for people who have a wide audience like Farage to speak up.
And they are trusted for whatever reason
They
by
are.
many people. And this is a subject that, as you say, they need to be talking about this, because the psychological thing that's been done to most people, in that we all know what it's like if you get scammed by
Yeah,
something. You're embarrassed, especially if
absolutely.
you've told somebody else, oh, invest in this, or buy this, it's it's dirt cheap, and then it turns out to be a complete spam. People lose their money. No wonder a lot of people don't want to talk about it, because there's a lot of people they may have told to do it, and a lot of
Yeah,
people lost friends, of course,
exactly.
within families. They've lost their, not just lost them physically as in they died, but lost them as they've not spoken to them because of their stance.
Yes.
So that's one.
It was psychological warfare that was
Absolutely.
inflicted upon us.
Yes. So now we're in this position, as you just alluded to now, that we know how these the globalists, the people pulling the strings behind government, work, and we know that as soon as they do a tabletop exercise for a potential virus or pandemic, that's kind of telling us that it's coming. It's all been
Absolutely.
organised and it's coming. So the fear, of course, is that the next one is coming any day soon. And as things become difficult for governments and people aren't doing what they should be doing, and the rollout of various policies like 15-minute cities and stuff, they do want us to be locked down and in fear again. So it does seem likely that something is going to happen. And the question is, will people, if there is another virus, acquiesce, line up, offer their arm, and agree to have something which they haven't asked what's in it, put into them? And
Well,
do you think that's a very real fear?
um, I think a lot of more people are awakening to it, and I think more people will refuse. But in the meantime, I know that people um, don't really want to write to their MPs because they feel that, it's a fruitless task. But if we don't, if we don't do something at least, um, then we're going to be in the same position we are going to be in lockdowns. If people don't stand up and say no more, we are going to end up in a Hunger Games society. I think the first pandemic was a test, an IQ test, let's put it that way. Um, and the second one, as Bill Gates says, will be a lot more severe. So it's down to us. It's down to us. It's not down to, the parliamentarians. It's down to us, the people. So I would suggest, as a minimum, as of now, for people to write into their MPs and ask why they are not speaking up about the excess deaths, because it's continuing. Just because Andrew's not in there speaking about it doesn't mean it's not happening.
No, and we're not seeing that. I mean, I don't watch the television, so it's very hard for me to say this, but I'm assuming, and that may be a bad thing to do, but I do assume, because people would tell me, that this is not being spoken about widely on mainstream
It's not
media.
at all.
No,
Nobody's
that
speaking about it.
people are dying, people are injured. You
Yep,
would think this would be the biggest news story, the ongoing biggest news story
it needs
of
to be.
all time.
Yeah, it needs to be, but it's not going to happen. And the only way it's going to happen is if we, the people, put pressure on the politicians.
Well, there you go. Now
In particular, reform.
I
In
know that
particular,
I know that my audience do write to their MPs. They are active, bless them, because they send me copies of the letters that they've sent to their MP. Many times they've sent them letters saying, um, why are you recommending this policy of mandating certain medical interventions when there are so many harms and blah blah blah. And what comes back is the very standard piece that's almost been
Yeah,
written by somebody in number 10 that just everybody has to adhere to, saying, oh no, it's all safe and effective, blah, blah, blah. And we know what's happened as a result of that. But I know they can and they will. But do you think they should then target more specifically reform and say, look,
absolutely. Yeah,
why aren't you talking about this?
yeah, absolutely. I think was it 9 million that voted for reform or thereabouts? Um, they're the people that can make the difference.
Yes. So if you're one of those, I mean, it's not for me to tell people what to do. However, just voicing my opinion here, if you happen to be one of those that is backing reform, maybe this is a good question to ask your reform candidates or the party. Why aren't they talking about it? Will they talk about it? Can they talk about it? And if you don't talk about it, I may go and join a different party.
Yeah,
There's a lot of stick that they can use to.
absolutely. I agree, Richard.
So yeah. Well, there we are.
Thank you.
No, thank you. And this is a subject that, of course, we cannot allow just to disappear because time is passing and there are many other distractions going on that people love to talk about because people get very bored. But if you're sitting at home unable to walk, or you've had a stroke, or your partner has died, or whatever, it's very real to you, regardless of how long ago it was. And there's also the element of the time bomb that many people have told me that some of these harms have yet to actually come into fruition, and
Hmm.
that any time
That's correct.
you
Yeah,
could be hit by it.
that's
So
correct.
so we can't sit on our laurels and just think, oh well, the effect is finished, because we just don't know.
No, they've just started. They've just started. So we can't forget and we can't forgive.
There you are, ladies and gentlemen. That was Ms. A. You may remember her case from some years ago. Insider, whistleblower, knowledgeable on this subject, and a supporter of Andrew Bridgen, who this channel obviously is, and we've had Andrew on. And if you want to see Andrew, he is appearing at various places, but let me tell you, on the 22nd of February, he will be in Thetford, giving a talk as part of the Great Resist. So, and I'll be there as well. Not that you want to see me, but Andrew will be there, and that is a chance. But do you know, Ms. A, has Andrew got a website where he is appearing so people can support him?
Yeah, I believe he does have a website. Off the
Yeah, if
top
only.
of my head, I can't remember it exactly, but if you just look up Andrew Bridgen, I am sure he's got his own personal website.
Yeah, there we go. So don't let this fall into distant memory. This is happening, and it's affecting people all over the place. And the trouble is, of course, I'm talking to people who are awake and knowledgeable, but it's down to us to remind other people, and to just put into conversation, even at the bus stop or in the supermarket or wherever you are. So, do you support reform? Oh yeah, yeah. I wonder why they're not talking about, what.
Yeah,
There's lots of imaginative ways we can get this out. I'm absolutely convinced. Thank
yeah.
you.
Plant some seeds. That's what I
Plant the
say.
seeds.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Okay.
much for coming on
Thank
and
you.
talking about it. It's such an important topic, and I really appreciate it, especially with your knowledge about how the government works from being an insider. And I wish you well with everything else that you do.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much.
So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. I am doing interviews again, as you can see, but not every single day as I was, because I'm working on my book, but there will be more. In the meantime, I'll be back with my monologues. So thank you for watching. From Ms. A and myself, take care, and send that email out to one of those party leaders and ask them that question. Till next time, goodbye.